All right, so let's start at the top with Rick in terms of separating this out into two parts, as we said in the email to prepare for the meeting, sort of relationship building and then actually getting referrals. The first part first, Rick, when it comes to building a relationship with someone, let's say John Doe is the person that you'd like to get a referral from, in your case, Rick, to a new prospective client that might want to be a franchisee or franchisor. Um, what kind of things do you think are important for you to capture, specifically so valuable to capture about John Doe that it would be worth writing down in your CRM tool inside of your database? If you had a spreadsheet and you had a row for John Doe and he's one of the people that you want to get referrals and introductions from, or if you had a CRM tool and he's a contact in your CRM, if you had a database of people to keep track of as referral sources, let's assume John Doe is one of the people that's ranked as a higher ranked referral source. Maybe you could put all your contacts in one place and rank everybody A, B, C, D. You know, your A ranked referral sources would be the people you'd want to invest the most time and energy into. The B's, maybe a little less. The C's are on the back burner, and the D's you don't want to waste any time with. So let's assume John Doe is in your CRM. He's ranked as an A referral source, and you've got places to capture information about John that you would get through conversation with him. What kind of things do you think, Rick, would be worth capturing, worth asking John, worth writing down in your CRM in his row in the spreadsheet or his contact profile? Rick, what are your thoughts?
Who does he speak with? Who is his, who involved in his network is on could be on my radar, my target list. So it would be important to develop relationships so that I can communicate who I'm looking for, and then that gives him the, you know, the information that's in the back of his head, that when conversation comes up, I know him. I know somebody you can talk to. So it's who is he connected with, and then, you know, I think
Let me pause there, Rick, if that's okay. First of all, great answer, and I'm not exaggerating. That's one of the best answers that I think I was looking for already, and so good I put it in the chat. So for each one of you, I'm now giving you advice here. You should have a CRM or a spreadsheet to keep track of all the people that can be a good introduction source for you. That's advice, strongly held with a lot of evidence over a couple decades. If you don't have a list, it's hard to work the list. If you don't have them ranked and prioritized, it's hard to figure out who to invest time in. So do that.
Any
That's my
tools you like there, Jeff?
Say that again, Ryan.
Any tools in particular you like there?
Most of the folks on the call would probably be pretty good with a spreadsheet, I imagine. So a spreadsheet's a good, simple tool for something like a job search. We don't really necessarily need a multi-user CRM tool for one person doing a job search. So a spreadsheet would be pretty nice and certainly get the job done. If you've got a tool like a HubSpot or a Zoho, those are popular CRM tools that I see a lot of people using. You want to go super fancy and you got a big company, you might have something like a Salesforce, which is fine. If I can use a metaphor here for you, Ryan, if you're training for a half marathon, does it matter whether you have a $1,000 treadmill or a $5,000 treadmill? Yeah, a little bit. 5,000 probably nicer. But what really matters is if you run on it or not. That's what really matters. So how you use your database is so much more important than which one you pick, in my strongly held opinion from years and years. I haven't seen the tool be the thing that's holding somebody back from generating introductions and referrals ever. It's always their focus, their effort, their discipline. That's really the key. That makes sense. But simple answer, spreadsheets are good enough. A Zoho or HubSpot or something else is fine as well. So first piece of advice, put everybody in one place. Don't have, your iPhone contacts and your a spreadsheet and then a stack of business cards and then your people that you keep track of on LinkedIn. Just decide on one tool. That's the best tool, having one. And then do this ranking, do this prioritization. What kind of factors should you use to rank somebody? Well, Rick gave us probably one of the best answers to that question. How do we rank John? Well, we got to know who he knows. We got to know about the people that are important in his life. So if John's a human, he's got probably friends, family. He's got people he went to school with. He's got people he used to work with and still works with. He's got vendors and he's got customers if he's in business. He's got, people that he's in parts of groups and organizations, both business associations like FENG. He's got, community organizations and charities. So literally, who are the people that matter the most in John's life? Think about a target. John's right in the middle, and the closest people in his life are a circle around, and then the next closest and the next closest until the whole target is every person he's ever known. So you want to find out who are the people that are the closest to John. And even if they're not going to be valuable for you, I'll use an example like a 5-year-old kid that he loves very much. Well, that 5-year-old kid's not going to hire you or introduce you to people. But if that 5-year-old kid is really important to John, you should know about that kid. His pets are another good example of this. They're not even people, but John probably loves his pets more than most of these people on this target. So find out his pets' names and his friends, his family, the people he works with, his customers, his vendors, people in groups and organizations. So getting to know who John knows is fantastically valuable. If I can use another descriptive word, I'd come up with a better one, but it's really powerful stuff. Let's go to now some techniques about how are you going to find out who he knows. So we all have access to the internet, of course. We can Google John Doe and look on his Facebook and his LinkedIn and on his website and, find out a lot of information about John and who he knows just from some quick research. But I really suggest even more strongly that you talk with John in order to find out. So a couple techniques, I'll put it in the chat. Share and ask. That's one technique. In other words, if I'm going to try to find out who's close to John, I might first tell him about somebody that's close to me. So if I wanted to find out one of Ryan's friends, I might say, hey, Ryan, I'm doing a half marathon in January with my friend Andrew, who we went to college together. We were Pledge Brothers together. Here are a few things I like about him and what he likes about me. Ryan, tell me about one of your friends who matters to you. What do you like about each other? And if I share first, then Ryan is probably, I won't say always, but probably going to be more comfortable to share a name with me. So sharing and asking. And then another technique is open-ended. Not do you know anyone, yes or no, but who do you know? So the wise owl asks who. So be the wise owl. Use that who question very often, every day, maybe for the rest of your career. See where you can throw in that word who. Another thing to do when you're trying to find out who is important to John is to let him talk about his own strengths. I'm not the best typist, but there we go. So I could say, John, I know you play golf. Who do you play golf with and what do you like about their game? But maybe a little bit better would be, John, I know you play golf. Who do you play golf with and what do they appreciate about your game? In other words, John's strengths are a key to his heart and to his mind. If you can let him talk about his own strengths, then he's going to be much more open to telling you about people that matter to him. So, here's someone I love in my family, who's someone that you love in your family, and what do they love about you? Here's one of my customers, that buys my widgets, who's someone that's bought your widget. Here's one of my vendors and what I like about them, who's one of your vendors, and what do you like about each other? Here's someone that I'm in a group with and what I like about them. who's someone that you're in a group with, and what do they like about you, and what do you like about them? So these are a few techniques to find out who is important to John, and you get to know his strengths at the same time. You can imagine a database, right? You have a spreadsheet where you have John in one row and Jane in the next row. And in John's row, you've got a list of 20 names, and you've got a list of 10 different strengths that John thinks that he has. And in Jane's row, you have no names. You don't know anybody who she knows. You never heard about them. And you haven't let her talk about her own strengths, maybe one, like what she does. Who's it going to be easier to get an introduction from, John or Jane? I hope you all got the right answer because I set you up to get it. It's going to be much easier to get an introduction from John if you already know who he knows. Krishnan got it right. John, it is. And it's going to be much easier for you to make introductions for John if you already know about the kind of people that he knows. So whether you're going to be the person who's making an introduction or getting an introduction, getting to know who's important to John is extremely powerful. Let me go back to Dennis. I'm not sure if you're able to come off mute, Dennis. I think you said you were driving maybe. But if you can, Dennis, come off mute. Love to jump into the conversation if possible. All right, we didn't get Dennis yet, so we'll go next to, oh, there we go. We got Dennis. Oh, you're back on mute again. I know you're driving, so please stay safe if you are, but you were off mute for a second and you went back on mute, Dennis. All right, we'll try to come back to Dennis. If you can come off mute later, I'll try to keep an eye on it. Let's go back to Ryan. We had Rick who mentioned that it's very important to find out and track. It's worth tracking information about John, who's your A-ranked introduction source, about who he knows. What else, Ryan, would you say is important to track in your database in let's say in a spreadsheet in John's row? What else would you want to track aside from the names of the people that he knows?
Maybe what he values, what his goals are. So if you can figure out a way to help him get to where he wants to go.
I love it. I'm going to just add slightly to that. So I'm going to call it strengths, goals, and concerns that John has. You nailed it by saying being able to help him. If you don't know that John wants to learn how to play the violin, you're not going to be able to introduce him to that awesome violin instructor that you know. It's hard to help John if you don't know what he wants. So try to go beyond the scope of the obvious. John sells widgets. He wants to find people to buy the widgets. That's super obvious. Like in any sort of like BNI networking group, everybody would talk about their product and who's an ideal client for them. What you can do is go a little further than that, right? He may want things for the people he loves. He may want things for himself much further in the future. He may want things that are extracurricular outside of his selling the widgets. He probably does have a lot of goals in life, as most people do. Some that are super important to him, that he's investing a lot of time and energy into. Some are more like wishes and wants, things that he might like to have. The more goals that you know that John has, the better you know him, the better relationship you'll probably have, and the more opportunity you would have to be able to help him. I added in the word concerns to add on top of what Ryan said, but in a way they're the same. They're two sides of the same coin. A goal is something that John wants, he doesn't have, and a concern is something John has that he doesn't want. So there's sort of two ways of looking at goals. Is a goal to get rid of a problem we would call a concern, and a goal to have something he wants is more of what normally people call a goal. But both, I would say, are things that he wants. And if you don't know about any of his concerns, you're not going to be able to help him address his concerns. You might know my goal is to run this half marathon on January 7th. but you don't know that my foot hurts, then you don't know to introduce me to the podiatrist. So you want to know someone's goals and their concerns. And that would be great information to capture. I wouldn't necessarily take it to the level to say you should memorize all of John's strengths and goals and concerns, but you should remember one thing. Well, two things. Ask and write it down. If you ask, if you remember to do that and you remember to write it down, then your CRM, your spreadsheet will remember all this stuff for you. So capturing information about who John knows, capturing information about his strengths and goals and concerns, that's huge stuff. Helps you build a much better relationship with John. Let me go to Krishnan and see if you could tell us, aside from John's strengths and goals and concerns and who he knows, if John's an A-ranked introduction source for you, what other information would you want to capture inside your spreadsheet or your CRM about John?
Yeah. Find out about which school he went, which companies he worked, something more about the professional side, both the school, colleges, or the professional associations. Maybe even something like the member of any professional associations. All that would help. So school, colleges, the professional associations, the companies he worked.
Excellent. What I'm going to do is I put it in the chat,
Right.
put schools, organizations, and that's a broad term. It could be professional, charitable, business, chambers of commerce, whatever groups and organizations he's a part of. That's broad. And companies, and then cities.
Yeah.
And if you're all thinking critically, you might notice there's a similarity of all four of these things that I put in the chat. And that is that it really is just adding exactly to what Rick told us first. These are essentially groups of people. A school is a group of people. An organization is a group of people. A company is a group of people. A city is a group of people. So we're really just adding a layer, an important layer, and an important technique or tactic onto what Rick already started us out with. John's an important referral source for you. You should know about the people that he knows. And if you know the groups, the cities, the schools, the companies, then you can go to that next level and say, oh, John, I know you went to, Harvard. Tell me someone that you're still in touch with from Harvard and what do they like about you? If you don't know that he went to Harvard, then you're left with a more vague question. If you know that he's part of the, American Cancer Society events, then you can say, who's someone of the leaders in the American Cancer Society events that really appreciates what you've contributed to that organization, and what do they like about what you've contributed? He's going to want to tell you the name of that person because he's already told you he's contributing to that organization. So groups of people is another way to say, find out about the people that he knows. So excellent, Krishnan. I am going to pronounce your name one more time, maybe wrong. Is it, I forgot already, Haza or Haza? Oh, she left. I'm sorry. I think she said that she needed to log out. So we lost her. Okay, let's go to Chris M. And hopefully your audio's sounding good. Can you come off mute, Chris? Chris, are you there?
She's
All
off
right.
mute.
She is off mute, but I'm not hearing Chris. So maybe we're having the audio connection issue. Not sure. All right, Chris, you want to try just one more time? Come off mute and say something. Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you tell us maybe one more thing that it would be worth capturing? We've got the groups of people that John knows, the specific people that are important to John, his strengths, his goals, his concerns. What else might you want to capture about John if he's one of your good introduction or referral sources? Anything else you can think of?
Krishnan stole my
Everyone's been doing very well, so it is not surprising we've had some people stealing
Let me,
answers.
yeah, I can help you if you want.
Let's go back to Krishnan. What else do you think
Yeah.
we should capture?
I think the people he knows is, if it is a LinkedIn, first degree, second degree, third degree connections, at least first and second connections, people he knows.
All right, I think we got that.
Oh,
Let's
we
go
got that. Okay, maybe okay,
people he knows for sure.
okay,
Let's go.
okay,
Let's go try Dennis one more time. Dennis, are
Okay.
you able to come off mute, Dennis? Trying Dennis. Going once, going twice. No Dennis. All right, so let's go back to Bruce. Hi, Bruce. Can you come off mute?
Yes.
Great. So John Doe is one of your people that you have in your database. Put everybody in one place. Rank everybody A, B, C, D as introduction sources. What's another thing that you think we would want to capture about John Doe if he's one of your A's?
Well, the one thing I also want to get to know, everything that's been said is great, but also on a personal level. Birthday, his wife, their anniversary, how long they've been married, do they have children, where their children are, all of that. Because sometimes I'm at a coffee and we know so much about our history, we're not even talking business, we're talking about our children or our spouse. And if you don't have that real connection, you don't really know that person. And so it's like, is somebody going to call up and refer a client to me? If they have that real personal relationship, they're going to know it. I think the other thing is to understand, their accomplishments that they've had, because then you can, if you're going to be talking, you can get a sense of, how do I refer somebody to them by saying, oh, this guy, he took a company from, X dollars to Y, or he did this. So you understand not only the personal, but the professional accomplishments as well.
I like that a lot. I'm going to, like I did earlier, I'm going to take what you said and push it back into one of the categories or two of the categories we already covered. We already said earlier that it's important to know John's strengths and goals and concerns. Bruce is elaborating on what we mean by strengths. His personal strengths, that he's good at teaching people how to juggle, like I am. The juggling balls, I already have them with me. I'm really good at teaching people how to juggle, but you didn't know that unless you asked, or someone weird like me would just tell you that. So know my personal strengths, because you won't be able to introduce me to someone who wants to learn how to juggle unless you know that I have that strength. And then on the professional side, you'd want to know my strengths professionally in order to be able to make that introduction. So the way Bruce is taking it to another level is, paraphrasing or adding what he's saying, you want to understand John's strengths so that you can have a better relationship with him. So you have that more personal conversation when you're at coffee or lunch or on a Zoom call. And also you want to know more about his strengths so that you can do a better job of helping him by introducing him to the right people. If you don't know his strengths or his goals or his concerns, you won't know who to introduce him to professionally or socially. Another thing that Bruce added was a level of the getting to know who they know. So when we talk about who they know, we're not just talking about their customers and coworkers and vendors. We're talking about their personal connections. Who are their best friends? Who are the people that they're closest to in the family? And when you get to know these names, Bruce was adding, I think, another level to it. Not just what's the name of their wife, the name of their daughter, the name of their son, but we'd want to know about their relationships. And that's where we can go back to, and what do you love about them? What do they love about you? And so, and then some details like, when was their birthday? Where have they lived? Where did they go to school? When did they graduate? What credentials do they have? Do they have, a JD degree like I have, or do they have an MD degree? what kind of credentials or accomplishments do they have on that side. That's also within strengths. So thank you so much, Bruce, for adding those. Let me go back to Ryan and see if you could think of something else that we should capture about John. Remember, we're trying to get him to introduce us to people eventually. And so we're trying to find out some things before we get him to introduce us to people. What's something else you think we should know about John?
I don't know if this is off topic, but one thing I find helpful in tracking is just recent touch points. Like, what have I spoken with this person about recently? So that way I can kind of pull up the conversation from where we left it.
Yep, I'm chatting something in line with that. So in your CRM, if you had lunch with him a week ago, maybe you just write down a couple things from the lunch, like where did you have, to remind you, where did you go for lunch? And maybe a couple of things that you talked about. If he introduced you to somebody a month ago, you'd want to write down who he introduced you to so you can follow up and say, hey, John, thanks for that introduction to Jane. Here's what's happened. If you introduce him to somebody, you'd want to track that so you can follow up with John and say, hey, how'd it go me introducing you to Freddie? How's that been for you? But if you don't write down your experiences with John, our memories are fallible. Our spreadsheets and CRMs are pretty flawless when it comes to memory. They remember everything we tell them to remember. So all you have to do is remember two things. I said this before. You got to remember to ask these questions, and you got to write down the answers. Another way to say that is write down your experiences with John. So especially introductions and invitations. So if he invites you to the XYZ group, write that down. If you invite him, write that down. If he does business with you, if he buys one of your widgets, write that down. If you buy one of his widgets, write that down. Any introductions back and forth, of course, I said that. And then little details, pieces of information, things that he seems to be maybe a little bit more emotionally charged about. I don't know if any of you have seen the animated Pixar film Inside Out, but it gives us the 5 characters: joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust. If you see anything that's bringing him one of these emotions that is pretty strong, write that down too, because that's something that means something in his heart, and you'll be able to connect with him on a deeper level if you know what brings him joy and love and sadness, anger, fear, disgust. Anything that's important to him on an emotional level, that might also be worth writing down. There's one other category that I'm looking for. I might not get it, so I might end up giving it, but let me try Rick one more time. You started us out so well, Rick, with the who he knows. Something else. Remember, we're going to try to get John to introduce us to somebody. What's something that we can write down that might help us to get him to actually make that introduction for us?
If you know all of this stuff about John Doe,
Yep.
You don't pick up the phone and say, hey, you got anybody you can refer me to? But you kind of can create a trigger. So your willingness to share. So let's say his hobby is violin, and you went to the symphony. You want to share that experience. So John Doe remembers you so that you're top of mind. And 3 days from now, you meet somebody that says, I should have somebody you should talk to. I don't know how to put that in 1 or 2 words, but hopefully I was on point.
Yes, sir. Sharing meaningful, relevant experiences and information with John. If he loves widgets, send him an article about widgets. If he loves a symphony and you went to one, tell him about what you loved about it or what you didn't. Share your emotions with him, and then he'll be more likely to share his emotions with you. Share your names of the people that are closest in your target, closest to you, and he'll be more likely to share them with you. If you make introductions for him, introduce him to people or invite him to things, they're more likely to invite you to things and introduce you to people. And we'll just use you as an example here today, Rick. You invited me here to come. I'm now more likely to invite you to an event. That's just the way the world works, right? People are more likely to reciprocate. Some people, especially someone like me, we don't like to feel like we're negative on the debits credits. We want to feel like we're in the positive all the time. Not everybody feels like this, but I do. So I feel like a little bit indebted to Rick because he invited me to do this and I haven't invited him to something yet. So that's there. Doesn't mean 100% it'll happen, but it's certainly more likely that I'll invite Rick to something. So do them favors, do things that are meaningful for them. You find out about their strengths and goals and concerns and even what they're planning to do differently. That puts you in a better position to be able to help them. So really good. Let me get to the part that I think is missing. We might not capture it. It's a little bit more nuanced. And that is what I call the X factors. I'm going to put it in here and then explain. I say X factors because we might think we know what these reasons, and I'll call it reasons for John to refer. X equals the reasons for John to refer. Now, I might think I'm super duper and awesome, but that might not be what John thinks about me. He might think I'm nice. So his reason to refer is nice, even though I think I'm super duper and awesome. He might think he's going to introduce me because I have a lot of connections, and I might think he's going to introduce me because I've got good strategies and tactics. So my reason why I think that John should introduce me pales in comparison to what we would call the X factor, which is John's reasons to introduce me. This is a little bit more nuanced than most of the things that we've talked about so far today. Most of the things we've talked about so far today are right down the middle, straightforward. Get to know who he knows, his strengths, his goals, his concerns, be nice to him, have a personal connection, understand his emotions, his thoughts, the groups he's a part of. I don't think I've come across anybody that's ever disagreed with any of that stuff or been confused by any of it. It's all straightforward right down the middle. Doesn't mean you all can't do it better. Me too. We can all do this better, but it's really straightforward. Now, this part that we're about to get into, which is the X factor, is a little bit more nuanced. So have some patience, maybe a little bit of leap of faith if it sounds confusing or off-putting perhaps in the beginning. Take a little trust. If everything we've said so far is right, trust that this will be as well, but it's a little bit more complex. So John's reasons to refer are basically broken down into two parts: motivation and justification. Let me describe what I mean by those two terms, because we're not using like the Webster's dictionary definition of these two words. We're using a functional definition that I'm going to create for you here. Justification for him to refer is rather simplistic, and I think we would probably all agree and understand. If I refer you to Five Guys hamburger place, that's because they have, in my opinion, really good hamburgers and even better French fries. So that's the justification to refer. And why I say that everybody knows this is because there are whole businesses built on this principle, like Yelp. Google reviews is a big part of their business. It's based on like a testimonial. If you've ever dealt with any marketing professional, they've probably told you in some shape or form to, if you had a product or a business, to talk about testimonials. Even you'll see the testimonials on the first page of a lot of people's websites. So justification for him to introduce you has to do with the value that he thinks that you provide to your, in some cases, potential employer, right? Which is for those of you searching, Chris. What's her name again? Haza? Forgot she left.
Haza?
Haza.
Yeah.
I'm going to spell it phonetically. But she's not on, but she was searching. Krishnan searching. Ryan searching. So for you, it'll be John's perception. He's your introduction source, so it's his opinion that matters, on the value that he thinks that you would provide to the person he's going to introduce to you. which if you're job searching would be, your value that you add as an employee of the company, essentially. There's probably other ways to phrase that. So his perception of the value you create. Now, for introducing someone like Rick, it would be, what does John think that Rick would be able to provide to a potential franchisor or franchisee? His knowledge, his expertise, his value that he creates would be John's justification to refer. So we should create and then ask John's justification to refer. One way to think about it is he's got 2 ears. So we're going to push some information into John's ears. And now it's in his brain, his justification to refer you. In other words, we have to tell him what our value is that we provide. And then we're going to pull it out of his mouth. We're going to get him to say it. So we push the information into John's brain, and then we get him to say it, pulling it out of his mouth. And then his brain acts as a filter. So we might tell him we're awesome, cool, and great. But then when we ask him, why would you refer us? He says, because you're great and very nice. The awesome and cool didn't function for him. The great did, but then he added his own version, which was the word nice. We tell him awesome, cool, and great. He says great and nice. So we don't want to ask him, who should I meet that would appreciate how awesome I am? Because that was what we think is the reason for him to refer. We want to ask him who would appreciate the great and nice person that I am, because that's what he said is the value that we create. So you can tell him what you think is your value in your own words, with your own stories, the value you provide for franchisees and franchisors or former employers of yours. You should tell him what you think your value is, but don't just rely on that. And don't ask him, do you understand? Yes or no. Don't do that, because he's going to say yes, because it's very straightforward. Instead, you want to ask like an open-ended question. John, from everything I've told you about the value that I've created for my customers or employers before, what do you think is, maybe a top few reasons why someone would hire me or why someone would, be my customer? And then John's going to tell you X. And whatever he tells you, write that down. Put that in your CRM. If you want a custom field for that, that would be really, really cool in your CRM, or a certain column just for that in your spreadsheet with John's row. The X factor is so important. His words to describe you are so important that you're going to want to use them again and again. You want to keep giving him information, putting new ideas in his head, and pulling information from him about what he thinks is your value in his own words. Because if you don't have reasons for him to refer, it's much harder to get referrals. Think about it like two halves. You've got the names of the people that he knows, which Rick said first, and we've covered a lot. If you have a lot of names and then you have a lot of reasons to refer, you've got yourself a good referral source in John. But imagine something simplistic. John's got 100 people that he can introduce you to, but not one single reason to refer you. It's not going to be a good referral source. Let's switch it up. John's got 100 great reasons he thinks you're awesome and cool and great and 97 other things, but he has nobody to introduce you to. That's not going to be a good referral source. He's no longer an A on your list. So you really need both halves of this equation. You need names of people that he knows, and you need reasons for him to refer in order for him to connect the dots. Now, if you don't know if he knows any people or not, and you don't know what he thinks, you might still be able to get an introduction. Hey, here's what I'm looking for. Who do you think I should talk to? That's okay. But much, much better if you already have the names. Hey, John, I know you know Paul, George, and Ringo, and I know you think I'm awesome and great. Which one should I talk to first about me being awesome? Which one should I talk to next about me being great? You've already got his words. You've already got his names. It makes it much easier to get the referral. Let me give you a little metaphor. I think we're running towards the end of time, Rick, right? Maybe 7 more minutes, approximately. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
7 to 12.
7 to 12 more minutes. You got it. I will end on time. Remind me if I don't. Just shout. So capturing the names and the reasons to refer, I'll give you a metaphor. You can imagine a test when you were back in school. You got 50 names of all the states in alphabetical order on one side of the page, and you got 50 names of all the state capitals in alphabetical order on the other side of the page. In other words, I'm in Florida. Florida does not align with Tallahassee on this document. So now you got to grab your pen and you got to draw a line from Florida to Tallahassee, and then you get 1 point. You don't have to say it out loud, but predict for yourself. What would you get on this exam if I gave you 50 states and 50 state capitals and connect Florida to Tallahassee is 1 point? By the way, your score is 0 to 50. There's no other scores, somewhere between 0 and 50. Just think to yourself, what would my score be on that exam? Okay, now I'll give you a second exam. I'm going to give you a list of the states, but over here I have a blank space. You have to write in Tallahassee to get a point. Your score is not going to be higher. No way. Your score is going to be the same or lower, almost for sure. Now, if I give you, by the way, think to yourself, what would my score be on that exam? 50 states, I have to write in the state capitals from memory. We won't say spelling counts because that'll make it harder. Chris laughed at my joke. Thank you, Chris. Then we've got a third test for you. Now we got 50 blank spaces here and 50 blank spaces here. You got to write in the states and the state capitals from memory all by yourself. Your score is not going to get higher. Your score is going to be the same or lower for sure. So back to away from the metaphor, back to John. If you don't have the names and you don't have the X factors already, John's going to get the lowest possible score on this exam to give you a connection. If you've got the names, but you don't have any reasons, then he'll do a little bit better. But you want to make this really easy for John to give you a referral. So you want to be able to give him the names. Hey, John, I know you know Paul, George, and Ringo, and I know you think I'm awesome, great. Based on that, who should I connect? Who should I talk to first? How should I get in touch with them? And now you're letting John connect the dots like we did with the states and the state capitals, drawing a line from Florida to Tallahassee. Another part of the X factors that's a little bit more complex than the justification to refer is the motivation to refer. And that's tying back to what's in it for John. What does John want from you or from the person he's going to refer to you? Let's say he's going to introduce you to Jane. Does John want something from Jane? Does John want something from you? The idea that he's going to do this 100% altruistically would not be a good bet. It is possible. It happens sometimes. But I'm going to bet if I'm going to Vegas, you're going to bet choice A, John doesn't want anything from you or Jane. Or choice B, he wants something from you or Jane. I'm going to put my money on choice B every time. I'm going to make a lot of money on those bets. I wouldn't bet against that. I wouldn't bet that he's just doing it because he's Mother Teresa helping everybody out. He wants something in return. What does he want? He wants to feel good. He wants to feel proud. He wants to bring some joy to his life. If he's an amiable, he wants to stay safe. If he's an expressive, he wants to be understood. If he's a driver, he wants to stay in control. If he's an analytic, he wants to get it right. So based on his personality style, he has a core need. And then he may want introductions himself. He may want a referral fee for some referrals. There are some referrals where people pay referral fees. He may want some cash. He may want some other way to be compensated. Maybe he's going to introduce you to Jane, and then you're going to buy his widget. So he may make money from you as a customer of his. He may want a discount. You're already selling him widgets. He's going to refer you to Jane, and he wants a discount on the widgets that you sell him. But the idea that he doesn't want anything from you or Jane is almost kind of silly. And that he's just doing it because you're awesome and great to help you and Jane? Nah. A lot of people falsely assume that John is going to refer you to someone because of your strength. That's the wrong assumption. Bad guess, bad bet. You should figure out what it is that he wants. It goes back to what we said earlier, his goals, right? One of his goals is, what does he want from you? What does he want from this person he's going to introduce to you? So, recapping as we're wrapping up, I would suggest that you put all of your contacts in one place, either a spreadsheet or a CRM or some tool that's easy to manipulate. That you have some form of ranking. A, B, C, D is a pretty good one. You can do some other form. And now that we've talked about it, you have a better way to rank people. The people who know a lot of people, rank them higher. The people who know very few terrible people, rank them lower. The people who have strong motivation to refer to you, rank them higher. The people who have no motivation to refer to you, rank them lower. The people who have strong justification to refer to you, rank them higher. The people who have very little or no justification to refer to you, they think your hamburgers are disgusting, rank them lower. And this is the way you keep organizing and ranking and re-ranking your referral system now. Now you don't just have the idea of referrals, which you all had before our meeting today. Now you've got yourself a systematic way of following up. You've got certain questions to ask him, certain things to tell him. You've got stories of work that you've done, your value. You've got ways to figure out what it is that he really wants so that you can get more introductions from John Doe than you've gotten before. Bruce Stein, what did you like most from our presentation today? What was your favorite part?
I think at the end where I want to get the motivation and justification. And I do think that people are motivated because they feel they're going to get something back in return. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So, if they're motivated to give you something, you know that they're going to be looking for something. There's going to be a justification for that.
Right. And how
really
about for you?
Thought about that.
So glad I mentioned that was the more nuanced part. So that's the part people think about less than, in my opinion, they should. So I'm glad you like that. Ryan, how about for you? What was your favorite part? Something that you might use and implement to help you in your search?
Well, I liked your analogy on the 50 states and 50 capitals. I feel like that helped it to hit home. I mean, I think that having a better CRM tool is certainly a takeaway. I've got a spreadsheet, but it could certainly be more robust. So I think that's helpful.
I'm happy to share with you, Ryan, a tool that I use. It's a spreadsheet with all the column headings already done, and you just got to fill in the rows now. So I'm happy to share that with you if you would like.
That'd be great.
Let me check in with iPhone if you can come off mute. I don't know if you were listening, or Dennis, if you can come off mute. We're looking for them. We didn't get them. Okay.
Oh,
yeah, I'm here. Dennis.
I'm here. Yeah, no, I liked I like the whole part of organizing your conversation a little more. I just kind of haphazardly go through, meeting people at, happy hours and things like that without a real structure to it and without a real goal in mind. It's just like I kind of haphazardly go about it because, I'm really just looking for business connections. I'm not, selling anything or necessarily buying anything, but just want to know people so that if I can help them or they can help me, I know who to turn to. But organizing it, it makes all the sense in the world that I just kind of overlook in general.
Thanks so much. I'm glad that was helpful for you, Dennis. And then let's go. We'll check one more time with iPhone. No iPhone. Okay. Let's go to Chris. We'll try your audio. We'll roll our dice. What'd you like the best?
Dennis was saying, I'm not good about the intentional conversation.
All right. I'm sorry, Chris, but we're only still getting half. So I think you said something about being intentional. So I'm glad that was valuable to be intentional. Let's wrap up with you, Rick.
I might have a suggestion for Chris that sometimes if you turn off your video, the audio is better. But
yeah, if you want to turn off your video, and Rick, I think you could probably shut off her video for her as the moderator.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
So far, yeah. What was your favorite part of the meeting? Briefly, please.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe not. We tried. We definitely tried. Sorry, Chris, we're just not hearing you. I apologize. Rick, what was your favorite part? Something that you learned that you liked, something you could use to get more franchisees and franchisors? What can you implement?
Well, it's the justification and motivation, and then your recap really kind of pulled everything in this whole hour together for me. And it gave me the thought of, as I prepare for 2024, I'm going to create a better system. I'm going to improve my system. And that's what hit me. Now, Jeff, I have a question. When I'd like to send out your contact info to Joyce so that when she sends out the recording, people who want you to use your tracker can get a hold of you. Is that okay?
Of course, yeah, for sure. I'm easy to find. I'm the only Jeff Talkman on the planet that we can find. And so you can Google me in 10 seconds and easy to find my contact information. And you already have, of course, my contact information. You are welcome to share it. And the referralnavigator.com is my website. And the referralnavigator@gmail.com is my email address. So I'm
Yeah,
easy
I'll
to
send it out.
find.
And Chris, she would love the referral tracker, so she'll get
Got
that.
it.
Your suggestions for intentional networking struck her. We're good.
I saw, yes.
And how to ask for information.
Sharing and asking, open-ended, allowing people to talk about their own strengths as a way to get information.
Yes,
some of those
the
things.
analogy of, John Paul Ringo. John, who's great that that you could refer me to, who's nice, who's awesome, that type of understanding of their sources, referral connections that you can pinpoint the motivation.
We still have a few minutes, or we're wrapping up now?
It's up to you. It's up to the audience.
Let's just see if Bruce, you had any final questions for me? Anything you wanted to ask me in addition?
And no, I think, part of it is just, it's knowing the person, liking the person, trusting the person. If they know, like, trust, they'll refer, and it's going to be the same way. And, that's been kind of like what I've always tried to accomplish when I meet people is, you first have to know them. Then if you got to like them, and do you trust them?
Yeah, hopefully some of the ideas we gave you today would just be another way to accomplish that more robustly, more deeply, and maybe even a little faster. Because sometimes without being purposeful with some of these questions and ideas, it might take much longer to build that know, like, trust. Whereas with these opportunities, maybe you could get to know, like, and trust, and he can get to know, like, and trust you a little faster as well. Thank you so much for that, Bruce. And then Ryan, any final questions, something you wanted to ask me?
Nothing springs to mind at the moment. So thank you for the presentation. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And we'll go to Dennis. Any question, anything you wanted to ask, anything I can help you
No, I
with?
just had a quick comment for Chris. It's, if I recall, you're between jobs right now. If I were you, I would figure out how you can solve your video conferencing, because a lot of first interviews are going to be the video chats and video conferencing, and if you can't work that out, it's not going to reflect well on you. So I'd spend some time testing and figuring out what's going wrong, because it's really not productive for you to try to interview like this. Sorry.
Thanks so much, Dennis. Appreciate it. And then Dennis, any question for me, something you wanted to ask?
No, I think it was I really appreciate your time, and I thought you did a great job, and I enjoyed listening and learning.
Thanks. I feel awesome, cool, and great. Thank you for your feedback, Dennis. Well, lady, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. I will follow up. What I'll do is I'll create a Google Sheet that you'll have access to view, and I'll use that as a tool. So it'll just be a hyperlink that I'll share with you, Rick, if you wanted to have me do that.
That'd be fantastic.
And of course, I'm 100% open to talking with any and all of you one-on-one and sharing more ideas, getting to know each other, and maybe being introduction and referral sources for each other.